Hi guys, my name is Chris Saturnus, and today I'm going to be presenting to you guys the issue of, is there a link between vaccinations and autism? And specifically, I'm going to be focusing on the con side of this issue. Alright, first I'm going to start off with a definition of the issue. And according to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, 1 in 88 children suffer or have ASD, also known as autism spectrum disorder. And over the last couple of years, researchers have discovered that there could be links between the vaccinations that are given to children at a young age and autism. And the discovery of these links began in 1999 in the United Kingdom by genealogist Andrew Wakefield. In 1999, 9 children were brought into his clinic, and he found out that 6 of the 9 children that were brought in showed signs of developmental regression caused by the MMR vaccine, also known as the rubella vaccine. Now, as a response to this, the United States developed safety issues for the vaccines of mumps, measles, and rubella. Alright, and going off just definition of the issue, one of the biggest things that's involved in this is thimerosal, which is in these vaccines that are given to children. Now, thimerosal is a mercury-based compound, and what that means is it contains self-explanatory. It contains the element of mercury, and with that mercury, anything that's containing mercury has to be handled with care, and exposure to it can be extremely dangerous to your body. Now, as stated in one of the articles, I found that what thimerosal actually does in these vaccines, it's actually, according to Ginevra Pittman, that thimerosal kills specified organisms, and it's able to prevent the growth of fungi that's used in the vaccines. As well as thimerosal is used to prevent life-threatening diseases in the vaccines. However, over years that this issue's been starting to heat up, mercury can have serious side effects to our body, which I stated earlier, and also many researchers have stated that there are high levels of mercury that exist in the thimerosal that's used in these vaccines. Now, some of the stakeholders and interested parties that are involved with this issue, at the top of the list is doctors and pediatricians, and primarily that's because they're responsible for the vaccines that are given to children. And they're also the most knowledgeable about the topic. So parents are going to go to them first if they have any questions, and they're responsible for giving correct answers and telling parents what exactly the risks are of these vaccines and what's included in them. As well as doctors and pediatricians up there are parents. Parents are starting to become very concerned with the vaccines that are given to their children, especially with researchers saying that there could be links to autism. And they consider the information that they receive to be vital in the decision to vaccinate their child or not. And kind of at the bottom of all this is children. Children are directly affected by the vaccinations to the diseases because they're the ones who are getting vaccinated. However, they have little control over if they're vaccinated or not. It relies on the parents for what they decide, and the children are pretty much the guinea pig. They're the ones who are just going to get the vaccines, and any of the effects are going to be caused directly to them. Now, the proponents of this issue state that, number one, mercury-based compounds, as I said earlier, can lead to serious illnesses. And also, since the vaccines for measles, mumps, and rubella have been introduced, they have noticed that there has been a steady rise in autism, according to the proponents. And according to the FDA, article I found, over the past decade, there's been a 78% increase in childhood autism rates. Alright, so what I'm presenting on is I'm going to tell you guys more about the con side of the issue. And it really revolves around these three ideals. Number one being that studies have shown that thimerosal does not have a link to autism, as well as I stated earlier, thimerosal is needed in these vaccines in order to protect the vaccines from fungi and bacteria, and as well as the genetic disorder. It's a genetic disorder rather than it being environmentally caused, that referring to autism. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to discuss is how researchers have actually said that thimerosal does not have a link to autism. Now, according to the CDC, the total amount of antigens that were received by children who got the shots, who got the vaccines for MMR, rubella, was the same for children with ASD and those without. That meaning that the amount of antigens that were in the vaccines, which are what's going to help the disease not get into their body, was the same for children without ASD and with, so not proving that there is much of a link there. And also, you can see that the maximum number of vaccine antigens is lower today than there is in the 1990s, according to the CDC. Now, according to the FDA, they've put a chart out, as you can see on the right, that there is actually a very low or trace amounts of thimerosal that's used in vaccines today. Now, I want to refer you guys all the way down to the bottom, where you can see the measles, mumps, and rubella. And if you look under the thing that says thimerosal status, there's actually none used in measles, mumps, and rubella now, this being a recent chart from 2012. And if you also look over at all the other shots that are there, there's actually very few of them have a thimerosal in it, and the ones that do, as you can see, either there's trace amounts or a very, very low percentage. And also, there's a federal concern for methyl mercury and not ethyl mercury that's found in thimerosal. The methyl mercury is actually the mercury directly from the element. It can cause serious illness when exposed to your body. Alright, now the second part of it is that thimerosal is actually needed in order to keep vaccines safe. And according to Geneva Pittman again, she states that taking thimerosal out of these vaccines could actually prove to be deadly for people who are getting the vaccines. As I stated earlier, thimerosal is used in prevention of fungi and bacteria in the vaccines. So what they use the thimerosal specifically for is they'll put it in these vaccines and it'll help reduce all the fungi and bacteria from getting into the vaccine and actually leading to more illness as opposed to what you're already getting vaccinated for. And Pittman says if it is taken out, vaccines could actually be more expensive for other countries with less resources and it would be harder for them to acquire the vaccine. Also, it would cost 2 to 5 times as much more money to produce these vaccines without using thimerosal. They would have to, as a result, they'd have to use other preservatives, and those other preservatives would probably be more expensive for them to use, as she states. And lastly, it would be much harder to keep them preserved without thimerosal, because once thimerosal, as she states, is taken out, you have such a short amount of time to transport these, and if you don't transport them in enough time, then the vaccine is no good. And if you take out thimerosal, the preservatives that we would then use would take a lot less time. All right, lastly, The last thing for the con side is that they state that autism is rather a genetic disorder as opposed to being environmentally caused. And then Chris Mooney has an article talking about are vaccines safe, and he states how autism is a spectrum disorder rather than one single disorder. And what that means is that autism is more of a linked condition versus one thing triggering a disease. So many different genetic things have to happen for autism to take place, as opposed to just one thing, such as a vaccine, to just come in there and that's how you can contract autism. Also, he states that it is a complex disorder. That means that autism does not show up unannounced, and its genetic compound is recognizable. As many of us already know, autism is usually attached to a chromosome, and that's where it shows up, as opposed to just getting a shot. Mooney states will not just make autism show up. And also, autism usually develops at an early age, which means as you get older, it's less likely that autism is just going to show up in your body from the vaccines. If you're going to get autism, you're usually going to get it at a younger age. And in conclusion, and some solutions to this issue, one of the things that is suggested is that information about the studies about the links between autism and vaccination should be spread throughout the profession so that doctors can report that to parents for when their child's getting vaccinated, and also they should continue to look to discover if there is a link. Also, the FDA actually recommends that they continue to reduce thimerosal in vaccinations, even though we've seen that there isn't much of a link. They still want it to be reduced. And also, while vaccines were thought to lead to autism, recent studies have not shown that. And one of the biggest things is that it's actually riskier to not have children vaccinated. And according to the CDA, vaccination rates have not gone below 90%. That meaning that 90% or above of parents are having their children vaccinated. And also, they're stating that the media has given parents a false claim about vaccinations based on what they're writing. And the CDA is pretty much saying that they want parents to just be educated about it and just make the decision that's best for their child. And that's my presentation. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you learned something new.